Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here virtually. I wish I was there with all of you colleagues at PAA in person today, but I had to be here in Washington, D.C. for an exciting event that we are hosting virtually right now as this panel is ongoing. I'll say a bit more about that in just a moment. But in the meantime, I just would like to thank Mary Jo Hawksma as well as Vita Marlani very much for inviting me to participate in this panel and to say a few words about how we in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy have been thinking about evidence-based policymaking. So I'll just dive into some remarks that I have prepared, and I'll look forward to engaging on the other side with many of you. And of course, Mary Jo, please do feel free to share my contact info with folks at this session, should it be of interest. So the Biden-Harris administration is deeply committed to advancing evidence-based policies that make equity a central priority. President Biden voiced these commitments very clearly during his first week in office, issuing an executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities during his first day in office. And then just a week later, a presidential memorandum on restoring trust in government through scientific integrity and evidence-based policymaking. Both of these foundational directives make the creation and use of evidence central. As the memorandum clearly underscores, scientific and technological information, data, and evidence are central to the development and iterative improvement of sound policies and to the delivery of equitable programs across every area of government. As the president's words should make clear, it is an opportune moment for building and using evidence in the federal government. There's a high level of attention being placed on evidence and a true commitment to incorporating it into policy discussions, especially those that focus on equity. This commitment is apparent in relation to signature pieces of legislation in the Biden-Harris administration, such as the American Rescue Plan and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is now the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, both of which are built on clear evidence and which include provisions for evidence-based evaluations of ARP and BIL spending initiatives. That said, it has not always been the case that the incentives structuring government work and that those structuring the research committee work in ways that are aligned, or that collaboration between government and the research community has been seamless. But there's an opportunity right now and a true desire within my office, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, to step back to take large strides in matching up the incentive structures of these sometimes disparate communities. For example, there are opportunities for the government to welcome guidance from the research community quite explicitly. OSTP has done this through roundtable discussions and listening sessions with research experts on topics ranging from equity in STEM to climate denialism to nuclear fusion technologies. We also view a central aspect of our mission as engaging every facet of American society on critical policy questions and bringing the full power of our communities, our perspectives, and our talents to bear in the work of social change. And we're doing this, for example, in developing a Bill of Rights for data-driven technologies. All of these efforts, taking place not only at OSTP, but across the federal government more broadly, can help to advance a culture of evidence and the Biden-Harris administration's commitment, not only to evidence creation, but also to evidence use. We also can change structures inside the federal government. As many of you may be aware, an important piece of bipartisan legislation related to evidence creation and use was passed in early 2019. This legislation, the Foundations of Evidence-Based Policymaking Act, or colloquially the Evidence Act, contained mandates regarding the ways in which federal agencies should change their structures and activities in order to give evidence a central seat at the table. Evidence, by the way, is just a word that is used very commonly in the federal government to mean research knowledge. It's a really nice broad term, but I don't want there to be any confusion. By evidence, we mean research. In response to the Evidence Act, each agency has appointed a chief evaluation officer, a chief data officer, and a primary statistical official, while also creating annual evaluation plans and learning agendas, the latter of which are now public for the very first time, and you can find them on evaluation.gov. This is actually a very big deal for the evidence community inside government, and we're really excited for this opportunity to share a really detailed information about each federal agency's key research priorities through those documents. This sort of structural change has enabled a level of openness and transparency about federal government evidence priorities that we haven't seen in the past, with the goal of advancing what we like to call a culture of evidence within the federal government, while also inviting the external research community into the black box of strategic thinking, planning, and action that takes place within federal agencies. But as you might imagine, it's not enough for the federal government to act alone. Within academia, there's a real need to incentivize research that takes the form of digestible summaries and reports on existing research on a key topic, prioritizing legibility and breadth of understanding for policy audiences. There's also a need to reward not only the full-length journal article, but also the one-page fact sheet. I can tell you, coming from the world of academia and now into government, that I have spent just as long on a one-page fact sheet as I have sometimes on full-length papers. So this is nothing to poo-poo. There is further need to incentivize translational work within our academic institutions by giving scholars the time and resources we need to get this work done in service of the public good. We have to vest it with prestige and all of the bells and whistles that we find familiar in the culture of academia. We also have to incorporate the perspective of open science into this changed view of research, an approach that makes all aspects of scientific activities and products freely available to all members of the public. Making federal science open and accessible to all is another central administration priority. It also upholds core administration values, including transparency, accessibility, and equity. In order to move towards a revised view of scholarly productivity, the Academy will need to reconsider our core structures, like standards for research productivity and tenure review. For example, in the fall, we at OSTP held roundtables on STEM equity and with many academics, and our participants spoke openly and passionately about how a revised view on productivity can advance equity by structurally accounting for those with disabilities, with enhanced caretaking responsibilities, and with non-traditional educational experiences. Making these structural changes also can help facilitate the kind of cultural change that will support more equitable approaches to success in the academy. Doing this work is difficult, and it will continue to be difficult, but it also will yield tremendous dividends when it comes to addressing our society's greatest challenges, from vast educational inequality, climate change, to COVID-19, and even cancer. And without belying my training as a sociologist too much, I'd have to say that we must address cultural barriers between the two sides, government and the academy, by increasing communication, so that we all can feel that we are working towards common policy and social goals, like ensuring everyone has the opportunity to live healthy, productive, and enjoyable lives. I think those are things we can agree on. So I wanted to share at this point a little bit about the Summit on Evidence for Action, which is happening right now. This is a summit that will kick off what we are calling a year of evidence. This year of evidence is going to showcase leading practices across the federal government to generate and use evidence to advance better, more equitable outcomes. It's going to strengthen and develop strategies and structures to institutionalize a culture of evidence inside the federal government. And it's going to create new and enhanced pathways for connection and collaboration between the research evidence communities inside and outside of the federal government. It's our hope that by the end of the year of evidence, We will capture and make explicit, effective, scalable pathways for connection between the two sides, between federal government and academia, holding equity as a core priority as we pursue this goal. We have lots of information that we're going to share following this summit. It's going to be on our website at OSTP, which you can find on the White House website. It's going to be on a central hub that is hosted by our colleagues in the Office of Management and Budget or OMB, which is called evaluation.gov. This site is where we're going to share all of the good and kind of enduring activities that we are going to host as part of the Year of Evidence, and also plenty of information about how you can get involved. I'll just say, as I close out now, that honestly, the federal government is working very, very hard to make this culture of evidence possible. But it and we can't do it alone. So the US higher education sector has a vital role to play. All of you have a vital role to play, as thought partners certainly, but also as actors with the power to change academic incentive structures in service of the public good. It's time for us to do that in ways that prioritize the kind of information sharing, research knowledge that can really be to the good of us all. So with that, I think I'm definitely over my 5 minutes, and it has been a delight to be able to record this video for you. And I hope that you all will follow up and with close attention over our Year of Evidence. And also you can check out, there should be a stream on Twitter later this evening. I'm using the hashtag Year of Evidence, hashtag capital Y year, capital O of capital E evidence, to be able to follow some of the conversation coming from the summit. Thank you all so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person very soon. Take good care.